Hi guys, I hope you are doing well and are having a fantastic day at work. So this video is going to form part of my short form content. I'm going to be addressing some of the questions that you guys are asking following a reel I posted on Instagram regarding saving for your little one. I have mentioned that you can save using multiple instruments, and a lot of you guys are asking how can we exactly do it. So I thought I would come on here and just address it in a another short video. So the reason why I actually address that is because a lot of you guys are making the mistakes of, as soon as your child is born or your child is a year, you open up a bank account and you put money aside as a form of saving for your little one. And what normally happens is that in the middle of the month, when you're running out of nappies and when you're running out of formula, or when you're generally just running out of food and cosmetics, that's where you dip. So you get into this trend of you put money and then you take money, you put money and you take money. At the end of the day, you are actually not accumulating anything and you're not achieving any goals. So I actually just thought I'd address it because a lot of you guys are doing that. And just because the money is easily accessible, it makes it easily prone to you just spending on another holiday or whatever case might be. So if you are then not putting money in a bank account for your child, where should you be putting that money? And I just want you to start off thinking about the goal that you are saving for your little one. What exactly are you trying to save for this child? And there could be various reasons that you are saving for this child. For example, you could be saving for a medical expenses that are coming up. And if that's the case, depending on how long that operation might take or that medical needs might, be, you might want to, put it in an easily accessible account, because that is money you're going to be spending in the short term anyways. For example, I'm going to be seeing my pediatrician in about a week's time, and my consultation is 1,100 for that consultation. That is something that's coming up. I don't have to put it in a separate account. I already know. I just have to incorporate it in the budget. But there will be certain consultations that are maybe 6 months from now, 12 months from now, where I feel like, yes, I don't want to be dipping in my monthly budget to squeeze in that. So I might want to put 500 aside, such that by the time we get to those 6 monthly appointment or yearly appointment where we go for his medical checkups, I already have this money set aside. And this is on top of what medical aid is covering. Some pediatricians don't, claim from medical aid. Some would claim from medical aid but wouldn't claim the full amount, and therefore as a parent you need to top up. So that's an example of money you can ideally save in a bank account. That is a short-term need. Or perhaps you could be maybe wanting to get your child, into extra activities when they turn about 2 years. Let's say at 2 years you want your child to start swimming, you want your child to start a specific sport that you think they might be good at. So you actually are building up a savings such that when the child turns 2, you would have that money for that particular activity. So in that case, again, I wouldn't really put a 2-year goal into an easily accessible account. For that case, I would rather than use a fixed term deposit. So how fixed term deposit works are, you go to a bank, you tell them, I would like to open a fixed term deposit. Fixed term just means I will tell them that I will be saving X amount of money. This generally can be a lump sum, or it can be a monthly recurring amount that you're putting aside, and you tell them I will only come and get it when that account is a year's time, or when that account is 2 years time. But most banks would make it strict that yes, you need to come back after 2 years. But if you do insist you want your money before the 2-year period is over, they can then charge you a termination fee, and then you can get your money. But the termination fee is normally slightly steep, so that they can discourage you from coming back before you actually are matured for that investment. So fixed term deposit are for anything like a year and older that you can actually use. And the good thing about fixed term deposit is that the longer the period, the higher the interest rate. So they generally start off to say 6 months. I don't think they have 6 months. Maybe they do. They have 12 months. It's like, let's say 12 months at 5%, 24 months at 8%, and 5 years at 12%, for example. So they would have, the higher the period, the higher the interest rate, to try and encourage people, because that means that then the bank can use your money for longer to generate a return, and then in excess give you some of it. So that is really another option. So use fixed term deposit for medium term goals. Okay, then we must also start thinking about, okay, my child is going to go to university at some stage, because in the child's life, university is one of those costly expenses, unless your child is really brilliant and they get a bursary. But also remember, I was on a study policy and I only realized the UCT fees aren't even half of what my study policy had accumulated that time. But I'm also going to speak a little bit more about that later. But if your child is brilliant and they get a bursary that is full on, then good for you. But if your child is not so brilliant, or they don't get a full comprehensive bursary, you would need some money to take your child to university. And that's also one of the ways, one of the need that you need to save for as a parent. So what can you use for this long-term big expenses? Your traditional saving schemes are study policies. A study policy is really just an investment scheme curated by asset managers or investment companies, where they invest in low risk assets to try and deliver returns for parents when their kids turn 18. Normally it's at 18, or maturity ages for many of them is 18, or when you complete grade 12. Maybe your child completes grade 12 a little bit earlier, so that's normally the condition. They generally would hectically also penalize you. You might even get less than what you put in if you penalize before a specific period of time. I've seen someone mention recently that for a specific firm, 15 years is the minimum. If you cancel before 15 years, then you might get penalized. But of course, it will then depend on when you signed up, how old your child was, because then there's no point in them penalizing you when your child has finished school. So those are the things that we need to look out for. Going back to study policies, the reason why I would still consider study policies, despite them being considered low risk or low returning investment, is because they still offer a tax advantage, which many other investments don't, meaning that you can get your tax deduction and save some money in the process. So yes, you will get a low return, but you're also able to save some money in terms of tax, and you might use the money to again reinvest, etc., etc. So I would generally also still consider study policy. The mistake that we did is that we save fixed amount and we don't adjust our contribution with inflation. If you are going to be signing up for a study policy for your child, please adjust your contribution per year with inflation, because that protects the purchasing power of your money. So if you just save 100 for the next 18 years, 100 today is worth 100, but 100 in 18 years time could only be worth 60. So by virtue of the fact that you're not catching up your contribution with inflation, that just means your money is losing value. So that's also one of the reasons why you should be adjusting your contribution with inflation, so that you can protect that value and your fund can grow to adequately cater for the cost of that education when the time comes. So if you are not saving using a study policy, what other method can you use? Then here we are going into unit trust. But when you are choosing unit trust, I've done a video on how to read a fund fact sheet. So basically, you call up your broker, you ask what type of unit trust do they have. You get the fund fact sheet and you read the type of risk associated with the fund fact sheet. You read the type of investors the unit trust is targeting. You look at the underlying assets that unit trust is investing in before deciding which unit trust to go for. So, but general rule is you must stay away from high risk investment, because you don't want your child's money to be too much volatile when it's time to cash out. So two funds I would generally sort of recommend is a balanced portfolio and an inflation-linked fund. So inflation-linked fund again protects the value of your money from decreasing because of changes in price value, etc. But your balanced portfolio, they tend to make it in such a way that yes, even if the certain asset classes in that funds are fluctuating, you have other assets that are going to set off those price fluctuation. So look at funds that are stable, look at the risk profile and avoid aggressive, and also try to avoid too much conservative, because then if you are going too conservative, then you might as well go invest into a study policy. So that is also two things that I would recommend when it comes to unit trust. So go and read, watch the video that I've done on the fund fact sheet and see how to read a fund fact sheet, and work with a broker that can explain to you what that type of unit trust is. Don't go and say, I want to invest in a unit trust. Go and say, I'm looking for a unit trust that is ideal for saving for studies. Ideally, it must be a fund that is not too exposed to market fluctuation, something that is sort of protected protecting me towards inflation, and also balancing my asset classes so that the asset price fluctuations don't disadvantage me by the time I want to claim. Then the broker would then guide you to which sort of funds they have that are similar or that are mirroring those characteristics. So another thing that you can invest for your child is, of course, property. So a lot of people that can afford to buy a second property would then invest in a rental property with the sole purpose of it appreciating in value, and hopefully their child can use that property when they get to university, or they can collect rental income over time from that property, and that rental income will be saved for the purposes of funding their kids' future needs. And also, a rental property would appreciate in value. You might say, okay, fine, I'm happy to buy this rental property and I'm happy to collect rent in the interim, or I'm happy for the rent to pay the bond in the interim, but I'd like to sell this property off when my child goes to university, use that lump sum in future to actually fund for my kids' education. So that is now when you are in a position to actually afford a rental property. You don't have to go out there and buy a standalone property. Let's just say you have an Airfed home. You can decide, I'm going to build 2 backyard flats, and I'm building this backyard flat specifically for the soul of my kids. I would like to collect this rental income for the future needs of my kids. So we've spoken about a fixed term deposit. We've spoken about study policies. We've spoken about balanced portfolios and inflation protected funds. We've spoken about property, and of course you can also just start a business that would then also channel those savings to your kids' future needs. So guys, it's not that complicated. It's all about understanding your savings needs. It's all about understanding your investment needs. It's all about understanding how much time you have to actually save for that child. So I'm just also going to reflect back. When I started working, I didn't have that many responsibilities. I actually took 2 of my sister's kids, one is a boy and a girl, to save for their study policies. For this one specifically, I didn't adjust their savings with, I didn't adjust the contribution I'm making towards the study policy with inflation, because I was still trying to gauge where I would be by the time I have my own kids. Because of course, if you are adjusting something with inflation, it means that year on year it's going to get slightly expensive. So I wanted to first see, okay, first maybe when I have my kids, will I still be able to cater these kids into this budget? Because I don't want to put myself into a situation where I'll have to cancel the study policy and lose hectically. So for those 2 kids, I am comfortable to just getting the bare minimum out of it, because it's better than having nothing. I'm trying to actually gauge or prevent myself from being black taxed and having too many kids stay in my house when it's time for them to come to university. So that is my nieces and nephews. And then I also took out my son's investment recently, but that is something I did straight when he was born. He's actually just over a month now. That one we went to unit trust, so looking at the balance portfolio, inflation linked, etc, etc. So look at how long you have. So obviously, if you are starting as soon as the child is born, you have a lot of time. You can play around with market fluctuations. But of course, if you are saving when your child is already in grade 7, you might not have the time and the luxury to play around with the market. That's when you want to go more safer investment like fixed term deposit. The one thing I want to contrast fixed term deposit with unit trust here is that fixed term deposit actually offer capital protection. You will never get less than what you put in, whereas unit trust and funds, you are at risk of getting less than what you put in. But the reason why I'm saying go for inflation related investments and go for balanced portfolio, we are saying that they tend to offer protection such that it's a mix of classes, so that when some assets are decreasing or they're not doing well, there are other assets in the portfolio that are doing better. So these losses are likely to set each other off, in the sense of giving you capital protection. So really, let's not overcomplicate it. Define your goal, define how long you have to save for this child, and then act accordingly, because that's the only way you're going to generate some growth for your kids. Until next time, it is goodbye, and please stay safe, and let's learn and engage with one another.